Chronic spontaneous urticaria, or chronic hives with no known cause. It's so unpredictable. It's like playing pinball. Itchy, red bumps start on my arm, then my back. Sometimes my legs. Hives come out of nowhere. And it comes and goes. But I just found out about a treatment option at treatmyhives.com. Take that, chronic hives. Learn more at treatmyhives.com.
You open the fridge, there's nothing there. So what's it gonna be? Greasy pizza? Sad drive-thru burgers? Dish by Blue Apron is for nights like that. These are the pre-made meals of your dreams. At least 20 grams of protein, no artificial flavors or colors, no chopping, no cleanup, no guilt. Keep the flavor. Ditch the subscription. Get 20% off your first 2 orders with code APRON20. Terms and conditions apply. Visit blueapron.com/terms for more.
Hello everyone, I'm Chris Wynn. Welcome once again to Haway the podcast. And today we see the closing of the transfer deadline day chaos. Or who knows, we might see a calmer one as we kind of hark back to the days of Jim White, yellow ties, Harry Redknapp hanging out of a car window, and Peter Odemwingie hanging around anywhere that might offer him a contract back in the day, which is legendary on transfer deadline day, of course. Because today we've decided to go ahead with an idea that we might come to regret, which is to record as we react live to the last, well, I'm going to say kind of quarter of an hour or so of the window before it closes, as it is currently, the time is currently about 10 to 7 or so. So the countdown is on, and you can listen to our initial reaction and also to what has already happened on transfer deadline day as well. And we'll obviously cover any late movement in the market, and we'll talk for as long as there is anything interesting to cover after the window slams shut, which I think I have to contractually say when I describe that event. And to the great relief of everyone listening, I can tell you I'm not going to be talking you through these events on my own because, firstly, I have Jonny Hawley to help me along. Hello, Jonny.
Hello, Chris. Very nice to be here. And for all the listeners, you're welcome, because now I sound like a real human instead of like a £10 headset. So the things I do, eh?
Well, that's it. I mean, but we're talking about that. I mean, God, these things are normally 11 o'clock, Jonny, aren't they? They're normally like midnight when the window slams shut. It's a bit early, this one. It's like a very civilized time to finish the window today.
Yeah, it's wrong. I just have memories of wee Philly and the parents' door and all that kicking off in the dead of night at the academy a few years ago. So it all feels a little bit anticlimactic after that. But it's nice to be able to talk about this while there's still a bit of light in the sky as one positive. How
could I forget that one? We should all be grouped together outside the Academy of Light, really, shouldn't we? And anyway, just a quick one, Jonny. You are on social media watch throughout this pod because I'm old and I don't know how to use it. So you've got to be up to the task of keeping us up to date with the gossip and the nonsense, if that's okay, Jonny.
Go on then. You know, it's a tough job, but I suppose somebody's got to do it.
Give it to the young'un. Good stuff. And as if that isn't enough to have Johnny screaming fans as our background soundtrack to our transfer day deadline podcast, we also have another voice to provide insight and another pair of hands to track the gossip as we're moving through. And it's someone I'm very much looking forward to hearing from because it's been a long time since I've had the pleasure of introducing Ant Watson. Hello, Ant.
Hello, my friend. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. Good to speak to you. I mean, you're like me, Ant, a man of many transfer windows down the years. So I mean, but actually, interestingly, and what do you make of them now? Do you think actually the transfer deadline day kind of chaos and drama, do you think it's gone a bit flat in recent years?
Yes, 100%. I think the day has probably been the exception with, you know, the whole like Isak stuff and Wissa and Mark Gee thing, which I think is going to rumble on. But yeah, I totally agree. The whole rigmarole of transfer deadline day, I think, it's just like a media day now, isn't it? And for me as well, I know it's like probably like a longer conversation to talk about, but I just don't understand why it's not all done before the season starts. You got teams that are like good honest football teams like Crystal Palace who are going to get decimated. who have been decimated, losing like two of the best players, and without any time to bring them in. So it's just it's wrong for me. But we'll see. Well, Johnny's waving already.
Well,
yeah, we've started quick here. It looks like Ajax have announced the Brian Brobby deal has gone through, confirmed from their end, and they've also confirmed the fee. Ajax agreed on a transfer fee of 20 million euros with the English club, obviously Sunderland, which could rise to 25 million due to variables. No specifics there, but on the add-ons, but yeah, confirmed from their end. So it'll be a matter of time until we see a picture of Mr. Brobby holding the scarf in the Academy of Light.
The first one to fall into the Mr. Brobby. But we'll get into each one, and that's our first update of the night in the last throes of the transfer deadline. But we will get into each individual player. But that's a good first update. But by the way, just quickly on that comment about Crystal Palace, with them next up, I'm absolutely loving it, to be honest. I think I don't think there's anything wrong with it at all. I think they should lose more players.
Yeah, someone coming from a cheddar.
Absolutely. Well, just to kick us off, with some general headlines from today very quickly. And some of these might be out of date because I think I kind of looked things up about 10 minutes ago. So you just never know how much has been spent and what will be spent over the next few hours. When I looked, Premier League spending is at around the 3 billion mark. The last time I looked, apparently there was 8 Premier League clubs who broke their transfer record for buying a player, and 6 have broken their records for selling a player. And Sunderland, of course, are in both of those lists. Net spend, and this was obviously before I think Isak is completely announced potentially. But net spend for the Premier League is over 1.2 billion. So that might have went up to even potentially 1.3 billion. We'll have to see. Most other European leagues are either in profit or have broken even. And I think, having a look earlier, the only league that is heading the same way as the Premier League was the Saudi League in terms of net spend, which was interesting. Biggest spenders, I think it looked like Liverpool after Isak, if you stick that on, and we will, of course, we have to. They looked like they've spent over 450 million, and they've broken the record that Chelsea set back in 2023 of around 400 million. And then I think Chelsea were the next big spenders around 300, and Arsenal at around 250 million. Absolutely ridiculous sums of money. And as I said, we're covering kind of the last 15 minutes live as we kind of talk through, and Jonny Ant kind of gives me waves that things have actually happened. And I say that because just to get nerdy, because there is a time that, the 7 o'clock deadline. But just to get nerdy about these potential last minute transfers, for these late ones, Premier League clubs need to complete what is called a deal sheet in order to complete a transfer in the last 2 hours of the transfer window. So the deal sheet allows the club to confirm that an agreement has been reached and also give themselves more time to submit whatever documentation is remaining. So that deal sheet couldn't be used before 5 o'clock. And then it does need to be complete before the window closes at 7. Once that deal sheet arrives at the Premier League, the clubs then have an additional 2 hours. So that takes us till 9 o'clock. Not that we're going to be recording till 9 o'clock, but that's what time we've got till to submit all of the required paperwork that's remaining. If all of that necessary paperwork is not being submitted after or before that 9 o'clock deadline, then the transfer will not be able to proceed. So I hope all that is clear. Maybe it is for all the lawyers out there, but it's about as clear as mud as far as I'm concerned. So hopefully there's a lot of deals that we can hear in the final stage. I think earlier on, and I'll start with you, Jonny, actually, but I saw a thing by the Echo's Phil Smith later in the afternoon talking about potentially that the number of deals that could yet be completed, the final stages could go into double figures.
Well, I think, you look at the way that the window has gone for us and for a lot of teams, there have been quite a lot of transfer sagas that have dragged on well past the sell-by date. I mean, we had the long protracted chase of John Lasumi that's, looks like it's ended in failure. You've got the Isak saga, you've got everything like that. And I think a knock-on effect of that we've seen, haven't we? So many of these deals, like I say, they've either dragged on and then they've failed, or they've dragged on so long that the only way to get them done at this point now is to try and rush something over the line. So, I mean, I don't know necessarily what it means for us and our nearest neighbours in the next couple of hours, but I certainly wouldn't be shocked when you look around the Premier League as a whole to see quite a lot of those kind of deals getting done over the very, very final trappings of the day. Particularly, and I think Ant mentioned it before, Mark Gahey at Palace, that's a classic, deadline day. It all falls to bits when everyone thought it was going to happen for weeks. And yeah, it must be a nightmare of a time to be a chairman.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's funny, isn't it? And, like the chaos and the headlines and the drama on transfer deadline day. And I'm actually counting now in the updated list of transfers that are completely done and dusted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. In terms of players coming to the Premier League, only 9 are completed enough where they're on a list to say they are absolutely done. They're confirmed. They're sealed. I mean, it just goes to show how long these things take, and that people are going right up to the last minute to get kind of the I's dotted and the T's crossed.
Yeah, that's it. Like you said before, that you mentioned the Peter and Wingy stuff. It's like you half expect something
brilliant.
You half expect something to rock up in a car somewhere, aren't you? Like, I'm coming. But yeah, I mean, it just goes to show. I mean, we got a little bit of an insight of that in the Sunday Night series, didn't we? With the Will Grigg stuff and the Josh Matcher stuff, and you can't like kind of begin to think how stressful it must be for like. Even the players and all, they're not sure where they're going or not sure where they're flying on. I mean, we've just announced in the last hour and a half, a few players that were leaving on loan. And it's like, well, they've got to go down there. They've got to get a medical. They've got to do all sorts. And it is stressful. It is stressful times. Plus, like, it depends, depending on, whether travel's arranged, are they driving, are they getting a train, are they flying or whatever. It's mental. I wouldn't like to be a footballer.
Yeah.
I'd like the money. I wouldn't like to be a footballer on this day. You know what I mean?
It sounds like too much effort for the way you just described it. Then couldn't be arsed with all that. Like I say, I'll take the money and I'll kick a few footies around. But
sit on the bench.
But just in terms, I mean, Jonny, in terms of how long things take it to be announced, and you might correct us on this one actually, because I've been trying to look it up, but we'll go through trying to go through chronological order a little bit, because events kicked off last night with the news of Mark Gahey potentially returning to Chelsea because of the injury to Liam Delap. We combine that with a bit of Chelsea ineptness by the looks of things with their strikers and who was leaving, and Jackson going to Bayern Munich and that potentially being cancelled and him kicking off apparently. But that kind of news broke this morning that was happening. But actually, even in terms of that paperwork, we were only seeing that late afternoon where there's messages coming through saying that documentation is now kind of reaching an end and it might actually be officially announced soon.
Well, I think that just goes to show you it's a perfect encapsulation of how, obviously, like we all know it's all ridiculously fast moving on a deadline day, and there's so many moving parts where, it's a bit like, I suppose, like the chain in a sale of a house or something. Everyone's got to wait for everybody else to get their ducks in a row before you can proceed with anything. So, you look at that stuff with Gahey for us, and obviously it's kind of turned out all right for us because we've turned around and gone, oh, that's all right. We'll just go and get a Dutch international for 20 odd million from Ajax and we'll be sorted. But we've obviously got to be, as soon as we hear that Gahey is potentially going back to Chelsea, and I imagine the club would have had, if not confirmation, then certainly internally they'd have had a couple of nudges to say, listen, he is coming back. That's what's going to happen. But as you say, the documentation's still not getting, signed, sealed and delivered until this afternoon. So the club have got to operate for, 18 hours in a period where they kind of know what they need to do. And so they've got to put the feelers out and contact the agents and all the rest of it. But also, at any point, theoretically, Chelsea could have just turned around and went, actually, no, we've changed our mind. We found somebody else. Gahey's staying with you all season. And then where does that leave us with Ajax and Brobbey and, all the rest of it? It must be an absolute nightmare. Just trying to keep everything straight in your head, if nothing else. And it's no wonder you don't see the actual official announcements and the posts and the pictures start coming out until sometimes later that evening or the next day or whatever, because who'd be a social media admin at the club today having to work in all this absolute chaos.
And as you've just finished there, so as we record, the window has now closed. So I'm watching, got Sky Sports News in the background, and of course they're showing Big Ben. Of course they are, because it's that important, isn't it? But yes, it's now after 7 o'clock and the window is closed. But yeah, just on that, and on you having to go back to Chelsea, because we'll hopefully start seeing these deals announced officially now, because the paperwork should be in for those deals that are completed before the deadline. So hopefully we'll start seeing that filter through. But again, Mark, how much do you think that kind of caused panic with us? Because I saw, him, especially with the game, and I was looking forward to him getting some minutes and seeing how he could get going. But I still had him, look at how Isidore started and Mayenda started first choice. I almost had him down as third choice. So, I wondered how much of a chance he was going to get to really get motoring.
Yeah, I think it's disappointing for him, because obviously he scored last week against Huddersfield, and I thought he did all right in that game, to be honest, and it was good for him to get a goal and stuff. And then he's finding out just after, being on a high with us beating Brentford on Saturday, that he's going back to Chelsea. I mean, I don't think he'll play at all for Chelsea this season. Maybe in a Champions League throwaway game or whatever they're in. But
he was top scorer in Europe for them last season, wasn't he?
He was indeed, yes. I feel a bit sorry for him, because obviously he's come up here and, he's only a young lad. He's come up here, he's probably, settled in quite well. And then having to go back there and, with Chelsea, that it's such a basket case of a club where you're in, you're out, you're this, you're that. And I mean, they're signing Garnacho, and they're trying to sign strikers. But they're getting rid of that Tariq George, aren't they? And he come off on the bench on Saturday. So it's weird for him. And you know what? I just think for a lad who needs to probably develop, and I think he probably would have done more so here than he will Chelsea. I think it's a little bit of a shame. But I wish him all the best. Like I say, we'll always have Huddersfield at home. That's what we'll say about him. Well, did more than Jayden Danns did. Can't be our worst loan sign.
Well, he got on the pitch, so
he existed, yeah.
It was touch the grass, and that was it. He was one step ahead. But yeah, I mean, Johnny, going back to that news when we potentially got that communication from Chelsea, do you think it was almost because we maybe had that kind of three lined up front, where we had Mayenda, Isidore and Guiu? Do you think that kind of, because look, it kind of came through at 9 o'clock this morning. The last night, the news broke about Guiu. Then this morning, Brian, I'm going to say Broby. I'll let everyone else make up how much I've butchered it, or whether...
Let's call the whole thing off.
Yes, exactly. And, so that the news broke this morning, as you just give us the update, a permanent move from Ajax, and you mentioned the costs in there. 23 years old, looks like an out-and-out striker, 18 goals the season before last, but sounds like he's had some issues on and off the pitch, which we might get into. 8 caps for the Netherlands as well. But how much do you think that was, we get a phone call from Chelsea and, right, let's go to our list. Who's next on the list that we can go out and not just get, but get quickly?
Well, yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? When something like this crops up right at the end of the window, and we keep going on about it, but time's of the essence. You don't have the time to, get up all the different filters on the databases that they troll through and, compile all these profiles of players that they want to get, and we want a winger who tops the charts in stats X, Y, and Z or what have you. It's just got to be right. What do we know is near enough a sure thing if we just put the money in front of them. And it's the money that surprised me more than anything, because like you say, Chris, Guiu is a third choice striker when he was here. It was quite clearly Mayenda, obviously first choice because he started all the games, and then and then Isidore being the second choice, the first man off the bench, if you like, and obviously scored the winner against Brentford and scored that third against West Ham. So it was pretty obvious, wasn't it, in the pecking order? And so it's a better outcome than I would have expected, because I would have thought you lose a third choice striker who you brought in on a loan with like no option to buy or anything. It was just a straight loan deal. To then turn around when he's gone and replace him with, a young, exciting prospect for 20 odd million from the continent you know, I've got no complaints there. For me, I think it's a really, really good bit of business from the club, and I think it's really impressive that they've managed to pull something like that out on such short notice. And, you know, however they've, you know, jiggled the funds around in the bank account to make it possible, cracking work, because it's so easy to, you know, get to this point in the window and you've kind of the purse strings are tightly closed because, you know, you've done all your business and gone hard early, but clearly we've thought about it a bit and kept some back, and it's paid off.
Yeah. And I mean, Ant, how much has it surprised you that, you know, we've lost a loan signing and potentially getting some money back off that, although we're not kind of sure what the figures might be. But how surprised are you that we've lost a loan signing who we had for the year and we've gone straight out and not just gone out and found another kid somewhere who's at the Premier League club who's knocking them in for under 21s or was out on loan last season? We've gone abroad and we're signing an international for over 20 million.
It just goes to show how it's changed, you know, from 5, 6, 7 years ago, where we would have been panicking and probably, you know, probably signing some unknown 19-year-old kid. You know what I mean? We're getting like a lad who is, you know, as you said before, you know, I know he's kind of gone off the boil a little bit, but about 18 to 24 months ago, this lad was like, kind of said to be the next big thing in Dutch football. So it could end up being a great move for him. I think, like I say, it's probably one we've looked at in January, thinking when we need to sign someone in January, if we need a striker, say, you know, in 5-6 months' time, if, you know, whatever happens with Mayenda and Isidore, if they haven't hit their ground running or whatever, which they both have, so that's even better. But it was probably one where we thought, yeah, we'll help that out in January. And because Guillaume's gone back, kind of went, yeah, we'll hit that one early. It was like you said before, he's on the list. Try and get that over the line quite quickly. And the fact that they've done it within 24 hours, I think is very impressive.
Yeah. Yeah. And just looking at some of the reaction, Jonny, I mean, I don't know what you just make of actually the signing of him, regardless in the context of having to bring him in because we've lost a loan signing, but just you know, looking at the transfer as a single transfer, bringing him to the club, as I said, 23 years old, had a good season the year before last, and I think Ajax fans might have been saying a lot different things then than seems to be the reaction now. I mean, I'm all for. I always think that sometimes for players they suit certain clubs, and sometimes they need to have a fresh change, and then they get going again. And every player who signs for Sunderland, it's almost like, you know, right, well, he starts. You just say, right, how does he do on the pitch for Sunderland? Nothing of what he's done beforehand matters or anything like that. But it's interesting reading the comments from Ajax fans, because talking about recent history in the last year, he has been disappointing in terms of his numbers. So the reaction is they seem to be glad that they're getting some money from him, and that Ajax have actually sold him. But what do you make of it? Just in terms of the type of player he looks like and being that out and out striker, because all the players we seem to have gone for recently in that sort of position have been players who can maybe double up on the wing, and he doesn't seem that sort of player.
I think it makes a lot of sense in terms of the positional aspect of it. Like you say, a proper out and out number 9, somebody who wants to play through the middle and he wants to score goals, and that's his game. You know, he's physically very strong as well. He's got a decent turn of pace on him and stuff from everything that I've seen. I'm not pretending to be an expert on the Eredivisie. But yeah, I think I'll be honest and say if we'd made this signing a month or 2 months ago, before we'd played any games and before we'd seen Mayenda and Isidore start scoring, I might have been a little bit more concerned about it, because at that point you're looking at it and maybe thinking, as Ant said, you know, let's say Mayenda and Isidore don't hit the ground running in the Premier League, because they quite easily could have struggled, even just early doors. Then you'd be looking at it and going, right, actually, we're bringing somebody in here who we do need to actually, you know, be added from day one. And that's when you would look at the goal record from last season. And yes, there are obviously extenuating circumstances. I mean, by all accounts, the bloke was being extorted by some sort of, you know, mafia fella, which might put you off a little bit.
Allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly. Allegedly before I end up in 16 pieces in a Dutch cargo container at the bottom of the ocean.
Allegedly.
But yeah, you know, I think because we're in a position now where we're actually quite relaxed about it, where, yes, we needed a body to come in, and we want, obviously, every signing you make, you want them to be a good player. There's much less urgency about it. So if Bobby comes in and he does need some time to adapt, and, you know, he needs time to get himself used to the pace of the league and Labrisse's tactics and his teammates and all the rest of it, we have a little bit of that luxury that we can afford him now, which to me makes this a much, much better signing, because when you don't have that immediacy, that real urgency, and with it comes obviously pressure and risk, you know, I think it just makes a better environment for the player. And the better the environment for the player, the better for us, because either he's going to perform well for Sunderland for many years to come, or he's going to perform well for Sunderland for a short space of time and then bring us a decent amount of money, you know, in 12 or 24 months' time. So, yeah, I think long and short of it is, I think it makes a lot of sense. I'm not out of the moon like I was when we signed Xhaka, but I think it's good business.
Yeah, that's the Sunderland model right there. That fans, when we sign a player, we're already talking about selling him in 12 months' time.
Right, we've all got to be accountants to watch football now, don't we? So
absolutely. Well, I mean, let's just quickly go into, because look, we've talked about Mark Guiu, which seems like it's going to happen, and the documentation was there. And again, we've talked about Brian Bobby, who looks like he's going to sign, but again, nothing confirmed. So I just want to bring you in on the only confirmed transfer, Ant, that has actually come out of the club today. The only one which is written in all of the websites as this is absolutely done, this is complete, all of the paperwork is done. And that's Alan Brown, who's joined Middlesbrough on loan for the rest of this season, or for the whole season, essentially. Now, we've got a lot of players who we expect to leave, and we're talking about that double-digit figure earlier on. I think most of them are going to be players who will likely leave in late deals. But Alan Brown was one that he's been on the bench this season in the middle of the park, but he didn't play enough. He was probably came to the club last season expecting to be an ever-present. My guess would be last season he picked up some injuries and then couldn't get back in because of the form of Bellingham, Rigg, and Dan Neil. And now, I mean, it's a bizarre thing, but it's such a sign of how much the club have come on in the last 12 months that he came and everyone went, he's a brilliant player for us at the start of last season. And now he's way down the pecking order.
Oh, 100%, yeah. And you're right. I mean, obviously, when he came last year, I was one of them who said it's a really, really clever championship signing. You know, someone who I think would help get us out, and has said probably his first couple of games, excellent. Got injured, didn't he? Can't remember who he got injured against, but he got like a muscle injury, didn't he? And he never quite got back in the side. And then was it Coventry where he broke his leg when him and Mundell went off injured around about the same time. And it was just so stop-starty for him. And then obviously the issue, well, I say the issue was not an issue at all, but us getting promoted, I think when you looked at Alan Brown, you were like, yeah, he's probably going to be one of the ones that will probably have to get off the wage bill, really. And I think the move for him is really good. You know, going to Borough, it's still close to home for him, so he doesn't have to up sticks or whatever. Borough have started the season very well, playing some good football under Rob Edwards, so he'll go there and probably they'll be thinking exactly the same as us. Someone who's going to be a good solid player if he can stay fit. Fingers crossed he can. And then, like I say, at the end of the season, if it's a successful move, he brings us a bit of money. And so wish him nothing but the best. I think he's again, when you hear interviews with him off the pitch, he always comes across very well. And obviously he's still up for the Ballon d'Or for that goal against Leeds last season. So fair play to him. Really chuffed.
Well, that's it, Johnny. I think last season, we probably will never know how kind of important he was behind the scenes. But I know Regis Labrie kind of mentioned him quite a few times later on, and he was filling in at fullback towards the end of the season, and he was just doing a job for the team. And I completely agree with Ant, when I think all of us want him to do well, except he went to Middlesbrough and he kind of spoiled that sentiment a little bit. But he's 30 years old. His contract runs till 2027. We would like to think that the pace that we're progressing now, that we're really kicking on, that potentially, and I haven't seen the details of it. I don't know if there's an option to buy in there for Middlesbrough. And obviously it depends what type of season they have. But you'd probably expect to see him leave at the end of the season.
Yeah, I think so. I think if we're being brutally honest, any player who's above the age of 21 who leaves the club in a temporary fashion this summer has probably played the last game for Sunderland. Obviously, the other one that I don't think we've touched on, but it's not officially confirmed, but I have seen pictures of him in Birmingham, is Paddy Roberts going to Birmingham, and he's another one who's basically just in, obviously the immediate circumstances of last season were slightly different for the pair of them, but he and Brown to me are in a very similar position where, as you have said, we've just outgrown them. We've progressed a little bit too far too fast, and there's just not room for them really in this squad. And don't get us wrong, I mean, both excellent professionals, both, hugely committed when they were on the pitch, and they've both given us some great moments watching them in a Sunderland shirt. But you've got to be honest and say if they stayed here this season, they'd maybe make 5 or 6 appearances between the pair of them. Or if they were making more appearances, it means we've had about 12 injuries in every position. So, something's going badly wrong anyway. And it's a bit of a shame, isn't it? It is the one sort of downside to promotion, is that you have to watch a lot of the players who've got you there, who you've got good connections with and seem like really good lads. You've got to see the back of them. But it's a decent move for them, though, and it's nice to see that the club is clearly taking care of the lads who are on the way out and making sure they get decent moves, and I'm sure that they'll be looking after them and supporting them through the season as well. And just a slight update, not on us, but on our nearest and dearest neighbours, they've actually had to lodge a deal sheet to get the Johan Wissa deal through. So that is clearly yet to be confirmed. That's from Keith. That's from Keith Downey.
Go on, Brentford.
Right? Wouldn't you just love a spelling mistake on that deal sheet, and then it's all void. Get the void stamp on it. Say, nope, we don't know who you're talking about. Sorry, you missed the deadline. But yeah, so that's the Alan Brown one's the only one that is confirmed so far. As we've said, we're still waiting for a few to come through, and we'll come on to some of them we're expecting to come through. But just a last word on that and that deal, because again, you love to highlight this because you go back 12 months and at the start of that season, I remember we were talking with Scott Wilson on a previous pod who covers all the North East sides, and at the start of last season, a lot of North East writers probably had Middlesbrough above us in terms of who might challenge for promotion. And you look at us now and they're loaning Alan Brown off us. It just shows how this last year has just completely changed the club.
Oh, 100%. I think probably the last 2 or 3 years, especially with Borough being one of them sides where you always expected them to kind of go up before us. Because they were always there or thereabouts, weren't they? And the last couple of years, they've just gone off the boil a little bit. And, they've obviously changed the manager. They've got rid of Michael Carrick and got Rob Edwards in. I think it's a great appointment. And they're doing really well. But it just, as you said, it just shows how meteoric our rise has been since we got into the Championship. We were so close the first year. We were up the second year off and all that. But then last year, we actually did it. And, it's to a point now where, we're loaning them, a player who last year, when he came in, we said would be outstanding for us. So it's still a pinch me moment, isn't it, when you're seeing things like that? But I'm all for it, mate, to be fair. And like I say, I just think it's a great deal all around. It's good for him. It's good for them, like I say, and it is probably good for us to get a little bit of wages off. And also as well, like I say, just he's going to play football. So it's class all around, to be fair.
And slightly controversially perhaps, but does this put to bed the discourse around, is it a derby against Borough? Because I don't think we'd be loaning Newcastle a centre mid who we thought would play 40-odd games for them and help them get promoted if they were in the Championship, do you?
No, it takes back Stuart Dowland, doesn't it, back in the day?
We don't want it to settle that debate because then there'll be now to talk about when we play Middlesbrough.
Well, let's hope we're not playing them for a while then.
It gives us at least 2 podcasts just debating that when it comes round and that fixture comes round. But Jonny, I mean, just because you mentioned it, the other loan move we're expecting to, or one of the many potentially loan moves that we're expecting to go through in terms of players moving out, and this one looks like it was more moving forward more than most. Was Patrick Roberts, as you said, moving to Birmingham again? As far as I'm aware, it hasn't been announced officially yet.
No, nothing from the clubs yet, I don't think.
But again, it's a sign of the times. Patrick Roberts, a couple of years ago, him and Ahmad just looked unbeatable in the Championship. They were almost like a cheat code on that side as a pair. And Patrick Roberts, going back, scoring that unbelievable goal against Sheffield Wednesday at Hillsborough in the semi-final, and brilliant memories for Patrick Roberts playing for. But 28 years old, and he's into the last year of his contract, and he's looking like he's going to sign for Birmingham City. So, but I think a lot of people, and I think I'm one of them, that actually I'm a little bit sad about this, that he hasn't actually got his crack at the Premier League. I kind of wanted him to come on a sub a couple of times and maybe show what he can do, and can he push these young lads who we've signed on the flanks?
Despite the fact that he's done so many good things in a Sunderland shirt, for me, Paddy Roberts is still a massive what if. Because I think in another universe, in another timeline, either Ahmad doesn't leave at the end of that season, or we get promoted in the playoffs and, maybe don't have to play Lyndon Gooch at centre-back against Luton. Not that I'm still bitter about it, but, I think, like you said, the way that Roberts linked up with Ahmad was absolutely electric. And that was straight off the back as well, like you say, again, of him scoring that goal at Hillsborough to even get us into the playoff final, to get back into the Championship in the first place. So I think, I think as well, it's important to remember, you think how Jack Clarke is thought of by Sunderland fans now, and we all think he was absolutely amazing, and he left with our best wishes, and I think most people would probably, take him back for the right price. I think, most people think he's probably got the Premier League in him somewhere, at some club maybe. But at the time, when we first came back in the Championship, that wasn't the case. Jack Clarke didn't even start at Wembley in the playoff final against Wickham. Yeah. And if you remember, not that he was poor for us in that first 6 months, but he certainly didn't set the world on fire. I think he only got maybe 1 goal and 1 or 2 assists, including the assist for Patrick Roberts at Hillsborough, which was pretty good. But, he took a long time to adapt. So had Roberts been able to continue that partnership with Ahmad, or, like I say, maybe if we'd gone up at the end of that season and he'd had a crack at the Prem 2 seasons ago, I think, it could easily be the case that the way that we think about Jack Clarke is actually the way we would think about Patrick Roberts. So, yeah, it's a really long-winded way of saying I think it's a shame the way that the last couple of seasons for him went, because, obviously the levels did drop off, and certainly the end product, really did fall off a cliff in terms of those numbers of getting, telling contributions for goals and assists. But technically, just, such a satisfying player to watch. The way that he could, take a ball down, dribble, beat people, and just glide past defenders at times was, sumptuous viewing. So yeah, I think it's a shame that, it's all ended up in a little bit of a damp squib, just trotting out the back door and load to Birmingham on deadline dates. It does feel a little bit like it's a bit of a letdown, but again, it's in an overall positive way for the club, because the reason that he's going is because, as much as we've just waxed lyrical about him and said how great his touch is and his dribbling, and, we've got better players than him now. And so he leaves with my best wishes. I hope he goes and absolutely smashes it, but just not enough for Birmingham to get promoted. Just, I don't want to have to deal with that NFL idiot in charge of them. I don't even want to name him. But yeah, much like Brown at Borough, actually. I hope they both have amazing seasons and finish 7th. That would be the dream.
Well, I think that was a first for How the podcast, because I'm not sure we've had anybody described as sumptuous viewing. I think it's definitely a first for the pod, but that's a great description. But and with these things, because we've talked about it on a few previous pods, actually, that almost the emotional attachment to some of these players who gets us up. And, I as soon as I started talking about Patrick Roberts, the international sign language of panic's going on with Johnny. What's happening?
Jensen Seelt has gone to Wolfsburg.
Well, gone to Wolfsburg.
Confirmed by Wolfsburg. They've tweeted it out. It's in German, so I'm not going to read it. that A-level I got feels like a long time ago now. And I'll let you in on a secret. It wasn't an A-star. So, yeah, he's on loan. He will wear the number 14, which doesn't feel like the kind of piece of information you'd include in the leading tweet for a signing, but there you go. We know his squad number. We have no other ideas about the details of this deal, but I can tell you right now, 14 will be on his back.
Hey, well, I just wanted to say for any the day-to-day fans out there, I was expecting Jonny to go Eknicht and Lichten. That they will completely understand. But we will come on to Jensen Seater if that has been confirmed. But just the last point I was making on Patrick Roberts, and because again, I started to get a bit emotional about some of the things he did, some of those games with Ahmad. I think that was probably his best season with us. Is there a danger of sometimes getting too emotionally attached when you do get promoted, that you want to see these players play in the Premier League because they've got you there? And it seems like the club now are more business-like on that front, where they're like, nope, we're going to bring some better players in, and those players just move on.
Yeah, that's it. And to be honest, it's probably, he has become a victim of our success, hasn't he? Where, we've gone into the season wanting to sign players that we think can keep the football club in the league and stuff. And it's kind of surprising me seeing that Patrick Roberts is probably not one of them. You know what I mean? And I would have liked to have seen him succeed a little bit more. I think you're both at the nail on the head. His first year in the Championship, he was outstanding, and he just hasn't quite lived up to that. And the problem being in the Premier League, if you can't improve on your end product, I think you are gonna struggle. And I think the writing was on the wall with him last week against Huddersfield when I think I spoke about it with Martin when we did the Martin and Brett when we did the React pod afterwards. I just felt like that's some Patrick Roberts up the last 2 years where he was just all fat and no one of them. And I think for him, he probably needs to be playing a lot more at his age. He needs to be playing week in, week out. It's a good move for him to go back out in the Championship. And I think what we've got to remember is, a few things with Patrick Roberts. Had he not scored against Sheff Wed, we don't get into the playoff final. We don't go up. Had he not come on and did wonders in the final last year, we probably don't go up there, because he was amazing when he came on. But it's just one of them ones where when we went up, I thought he would have been, one of the ones I think I'm not overly sure that he would succeed in the Premier League. And again, I think you mentioned before getting emotionally attached to players. I actually really like Patrick Roberts, but the last 18 months, I've also thought that we probably outgrew him. It was just too many, and what happened last year as well, where he was just too inconsistent. He was in and out of games. He was getting the ball. We were getting the ball in really, really good positions for him, and he was, he seemed a little bit like kind of scared to put that right ball in or to have a shot or whatever. And he just did the easy thing and passing it backwards or whatever. But, long and short of his, he's been here, 3.5, 4 years, hasn't he? And his time here will be seen as a success. When we look back in this in about 2 or 3 years' time or whatever, you've got to see he's got to go down as one of those players who's been very, very instrumental in getting us where we are. So just wish him nothing but the best. It's obviously he's played his last game for us because his contract's out at the end of the season, isn't it? And it looks as if either we're going to accept a bid or whatever in January, or he's going to go on a free. And yeah, it is what it is. I'm afraid with that, and I hate saying that word, but it is, and it's just one of them things where enjoy him, and he'll always come back here. Whenever he does come back here, I think you'll get like the Lyndon Gooch and the Jordan Henderson treatment, where he will get a really, really good ovation because he's done wonders for us. So fair play to him.
Yeah, I echo all of that as well. And but let's stick with Jensen Seater next, because that was, of course, our last update, Jonny, that we've had through that you've kind of waved and panicked about. So we'll stick with that. 22 years old. You said you just said about 5-10 minutes ago that you expect any loan deal for anyone over the age of 21.
Why did I say it?
Well, yeah, I thought I'd pull you on it a little bit, but this is the one where that is kind of, this is the potential grey area in terms of Jensen Seater, because 22 years old, contracted till 2028, so he's contracted for the next 3 years. And this is a great move. You look at Wolfsburg, finished 11th in Bundesliga last year, and in their, I think they've played 2 or 3 games this season. I can't remember, but they're unbeaten. I think they've won 1 and drawn 1 so far this season, so they're unbeaten so far. An international sign language of panic going on. And
not for us, but Johnny mentioned before regarding the deal sheet for Wissa. Frankfurt's move for Willa Sula has now been called off. So there may be a slight issue with the Wissa stuff. But Sula was meant to be going for like 30-odd million quid, which was absolutely stupid money anyway. So maybe someone at Frankfurt's just like woke up to the fact that he's useless. And just went, no, we don't want him. But yeah, so, something that might drag on from there.
Interesting. And of course, they've still got to find that spelling mistake on the deal sheet as well, which is about to happen as well. But yeah, in terms of Jensen Seelt, Johnny, that, 22 years old, this, I think, is a great move of Wolfsburg. And I think I've always thought there's a player there. And if you think you had pretty much a year out, which really hampered him. And I think there's a player there. And I know pre-season is pre-season. We keep saying that, but I thought he did okay in there. And again, and I felt, I kind of, it was one of those where you felt yourself sigh when he got injured on the opening day of the season, that you thought, God, can he not just catch a break? That there's a player in there somewhere. But hopefully, on paper, this looks like a really good move that he can kind of kickstart things.
I think it's about as good a move as he could have got, isn't it? And I don't mean that because he's not good. I mean, just it's a brilliant move. And I was just looking at so we've also confirmed that on our social media side as well now. So we've got Christian Speakman speaking about him, and he is absolutely glowing. First and foremost, we were delighted to see Jensen return to action this summer. Throughout pre-season and the start of the Premier League campaign, he's looked really good. But we believe this season he needs to play more minutes than we can guarantee at this moment in time. The opportunity to play in the Bundesliga is the perfect platform for him to feature regularly at a high level and gain the experience he needs at this stage of his development. Now, that is, I imagine, a lot warmer of a paragraph than somebody like an Abdullah Bar and Adil Oshish was going to get. That's the difference between somebody who's going on loan to put themselves in the shop window and try and get a move permanently elsewhere versus Seelt, who I think it's pretty clear. I mean, it was pretty clear anyway that he was going to be going with a view to being reintegrated into the first team when he comes back. But that all but confirms, doesn't it, that the club are still very high on Seelt. They clearly, as you say about his injury, Chris, that was a terrible time for him. But clearly the club think that he's bounced back from it, and he is still going to have the potential to turn into a really, really good defender. So I think it's a great move for him. It's a good level of football as well, which is important. Because assuming that we stay in the Premier League this season, which big assumption, but let's just say we do, then when he comes back, it'll be off the back of a season of, a top flight in Europe, one of the top 5 leagues, rather than coming back off a second tier loan or sort of a lower standard division, which should make it all the easier for him to then be able to come back and get up to speed with the lads quickly. So I think it's a great move. Really, really happy for him. And just as well, it'll be nice, crossing fingers, toes, legs, arms and the rest, if he can get the whole season out of the way without picking up a single major injury. Just confidence-wise, that'll end up being a giant boost for him, because it must be so frustrating to not feel like you trust yourself when you go out on the pitch. And when he went down holding his hip against West Ham, I thought, that's his season done, after about 40 minutes or whatever it was, 50 minutes. So yeah, just overall really, really pleased for him. He seems like a really nice guy as well. And he did look decent in the first few games. So I think, Wolfsburg fans, if, the hundreds of Wolfsburg listeners we've got, I think you've got yourselves a decent little player.
Yeah. I mean, Ant, Johnny made the comment saying everyone over the age of 21 who was going to leave us on loan will not...
Stop saying that.
Will not... He told us all that they'd not play for Sunderland again. Would you expect to see Jensen Seelt in the Sunderland shirt again? He is contracted for the next 3 years.
Yeah, I do. I think so. A lad who has been so unlucky, hasn't he? And I think we all want to see, him to have a really good season there. stay fit, stay healthy, come back next year and compete, because he will. If everything's there, and he looks a really, really good footballer. And I think in pre-season they were all like, everyone was just waxing around about wanting to say, and he just looks so much improved. And the fact that Reggie's actually took a chance on him in the first game and everything like that was really good to see. And I think it's, again, for us, the fact that we've actually got Alderati in, and we've got Madrid in, who was excellent on Saturday, and got Lugo Knight to come back, Dan Barter to come back, and it's just the right thing for Jensen to go out there, prove his worth, come back in, and then fight for his place next year. I think he'll be the one where I'm going to look at, I'm going to probably become a bit of a fan of Wolfsburg and see how they're doing, just to see what he can do. It's really, really good for him. And, you never know, he might be on penalties for him as well after last week, because that was tremendous. So, he'll definitely want to come back. Or, it might be a one where, a deal they might think, we'll take a chance on him and we get some money for him. But, great for him. That's a great move, that.
Well, isn't the Bundesliga live on the Overlap and potentially the BBC or something like that? I can't remember.
And there are also going to be some live watch-along streams with Mark Goldbridge on YouTube. That
I knew I'd seen something like that, but yeah. So we can all keep in touch with Jensen Seal, which is great.
And Mark Goldbridge has just got 49,000 new fans.
Well, it'd be interesting to see how he gets on, and I'll be interested to see if you're right, Ant, and he does turn out in a Sunderland strip again. But let's stay in defence, because we'll start moving on to these deals that have been kind of trundling on all day. And just as we said, we'll stay in defence, and it's apparently the agreed loan deal, and let's get this right, for Lucharel Gertrude. And that's what I'm going to stick with for now. Sounding like gold member, as we said earlier. But on loan for the season from RB Leipzig. And apparently the deal is 2.5 million for that loan for the year. Looking at him, he went to RB Leipzig for around 20 million from Feyenoord last summer. And from the reports, and these were the ones earlier, because like I said, this one kind of broke at 9 o'clock this morning. It looked like we had an option to buy, which what I read seemed to be around 18.2 million next summer. I don't know if that's changed. But yeah, Jonny, from what I'm reading, it's one of these, a little bit like Mukulele when he signed that. Apparently he can play fullback, but he can also play centre half, and has also played in the centre of midfield in terms of that defensive midfielder. 25 years old, 17 caps for Netherlands. Played a lot of games for Leipzig. So when I look at this, he doesn't look like a player who's coming in to sit on the bench and make up the numbers. So where do you see him fitting in?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? Because I'll be honest, at the minute, I sort of don't see him fitting in. Now, that's not to say that I don't like the signing, or I don't think he's going to be a good player, because, his pedigree is obviously is definitely there. And when you look at his kind of, you look at his honours section on Wikipedia, the fella's been involved in some successful teams. He's played in, I think I'm right in saying he played in the Europa Conference League final in 2022, which they lost to Roma. So not only has he played in decent competitions and he's won domestic titles as well, he's played in a major European final, which is the kind of experience that, not very many footballers in the history of the game get to have, because there used to be 2 a season, now there's 3, but there's only 3 finals every season, so there's only 6 teams can get to them every season. And he was in one of them. So yeah, I think that's another big plus. And to be honest, it makes it sound a bit like a broken record from, earlier in the summer when we've been doing these pods and talking about Mukiele and players like that, and kind of banging on about the whole lots of European experience angle, which I think is something that the club have just so clearly intentionally pushed. The amount of players we've signed who've played a few dozen games across Champions League, Europa League, Conference League. Again, it was such a massively obvious area of the squad that was lacking, is that experience, and he's yet another who brings it in spades. So whether he's going to displace Trey Hume at right back, whether he's going to rotate at centre back between, Mukiele, Alderete, Ballard when he's fit. I mean, those are questions that remain to be answered. But certainly in terms of his place in the squad, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think it does give us more options and more versatility, and crucially more cover in an area of the pitch where until the last few weeks at fullback, we'd looked very light for a long time. So, I certainly do see a lot of a sense, and I hope it works out. But just where he'll start for me is a bit up in the air.
Yeah, again, I haven't seen this one. This one hasn't been confirmed yet, although there was a social media tweet from Leipzig essentially saying bye to him and good luck for the rest of the season. But Ant, I mean, and maybe some news,
we've confirmed him.
We've
confirmed.
Been confirmed. Perfect timing, right in the middle of talking about it. I mean, it's almost like we planned it, but obviously we did anything. But Ant, since it's been confirmed, we can bring you in on him as a confirmed signing now. He has actually come on that loan deal. But Jonny was talking about it there, and I asked the question, where does he fit in? Now, looking at him and looking where he's played, I tend to think, looking at the centre-halves have signed, and got Ballard to come back, hopefully. We've got Luke O'Nien to come back as well. I mean, he is potentially cover for that centre-half position. But I do think he's come to put some pressure on Trey Hume in that right-back position. Otherwise, he hasn't got that much pressure on him. And if you look at let's just go back through the last few years in terms of Gertrude's time at Leipzig and Feyenoord. In terms of total games in the season, 35 games, 47 games, 41 games, 41 games, 37 games. And then there was 26 games just in kind of his breakthrough season. I mean, he's basically been an ever-present in every season he's played since that breakout season, and at the top level. So he really hasn't come to get splinters in his backside on the bench for us, has he?
No, not at all. And looking at them numbers, Chris, you look at that. That's a lad who keeps himself fit, keeps himself healthy, doesn't look as if he gets many injuries. So that could be a good thing. Again, we do need that little bit of help with Trey, because, Trey Hume's been, again, another one who's been absolutely outstanding for us. But we know that Trey likes to tackle, Trey likes a yellow card. So I would imagine there will be, a time where we probably are missing him due to suspension. It goes back to the Mukiele signings and the Alderete signing. We're signing players with, a good European pedigree and a little bit of experience. We're not just going out signing these young lads who are already under pressure to be good. We're signing these lads who have been in cup finals, played with a lot of very good footballers who are coming here. For me, without seeing too much of him, he's another one. I'm not going to, say that I'm an expert on the lad, but the stats and everything like that. I watched a couple of videos of him last night. He looks a very good footballer. So, maybe he's going to be a one where he's not going to start first couple of games or whatever. But like I say, when we do need him, and he can play across the back, so that's another good thing. And for me, it just seems like a clever one, especially with Niall Huggins is expected to leave today, isn't he? He's expected to go to Wigan. So we do need that cover for Trey Hume and everything like that, and it just looks a good sign on that.
Yeah. We'll stick with that because you mentioned it. Again, the next one on the list, I suppose, because you mentioned it, is Niall Huggins potentially going out to go to Wycombe Wanderers, where he can team up again with Mike Forbes. Jonny, again, we're talking about Sealt, another one with injuries, and he was essentially backup to Trey Hume, really, at fullback, which is a bizarre thing. And then we're trading him in for a kind of Holland International, Netherlands International, 17 caps, but dude went for 20 million next year, and this is the kind of the new market that we're shopping in. But Niall Huggins, I think, again, another one, 24 contract up at the end of the season. That's likely him done with Sunderland if that's all confirmed that he goes out for the season. You've just got to feel from that. Again, you talked about it earlier, that with someone else in a parallel universe somewhere, Niall Huggins had a good career at Sunderland, didn't he?
Yeah, in a different universe, he's probably on his 200th appearance for us by now. And we're all starting to talk about him the same way we do about Luke O'Nien or something. Well, maybe not that far, but nobody can replace Luke. But yeah, I think
he wouldn't have saved dogs and
exactly
fixed cars and all that stuff.
And how many piggybacks would he have got off Bristol City players, man?
Exactly.
But yeah, no, I think with Huggins, I think the thing that really stood out for me is that when you look at the split of his appearances for us, which obviously there's not loads, but I think he made 3 league appearances in our first championship season, and then he made 19 appearances in our second championship season, and then no appearances last season through injury. And it's a little bit 6 and 2 threes between. He's a bit unlucky to have only been fit for half a season in our worst of the 3 championship seasons. So sort of ties in with a bit of the negativity by association. Or flip side of it is Trey Hume was just a better fullback than him, at that moment in time, because he was a bit further ahead in his development. So when Hume's in the team, we play better and therefore finish higher. But that to me sums up Huggins' Sunderland career. It's just all wrong time, wrong time, wrong place. Nothing was quite working out. Everything's just a little bit, he was playing left back for a bit, and then he was playing right back for a bit, and it was all a bit all over the place, and all a bit slapdash, and all a bit sort of square pegs in round holes, kind of all the way down, if that makes sense. Nothing's made sense. And it's not through anyone's fault. It's not through Huggins' lack of application. It's not through the club's lack of planning. It's just one of them things. Sometimes players have different tolerances for injuries, and players have different, weaknesses naturally, genetically in the bodies. And obviously Huggins has just been, cursed with ligaments and joints and muscles that don't quite want to play a ball. So yeah, I think he should leave with our best wishes, because I do think at times he has shown the ability that's undoubtedly in there. And like you say, in another life, he probably is good enough to be starting every week for us at the minute. If everything, kind of goes his way. But yeah, just one of those where you look back at it and just think, I just never got going. If he'd maybe got that one full season out of the way, where he plays 30, 40 games and has a body of work to build on, you're probably looking at a different player. But yeah, the way it's gone, that's not happened. And, I hope he does well down at Wickham. It's just a shame, at his age, he shouldn't be getting a loan to a League One club because he's better than that. But it is what it is, as Ant so fond of saying.
Yeah. Well, what's your 2 pence worth on Niall Huggins? Is anything else to say? Because he had that run in the side, didn't he, where everyone thought he's really going to, there's his Sunderland career, going to kick on now, and then he got that injury, and everyone's willed him to come back. But again, I think it's like the conversation happened earlier. The club have moved on, really, haven't they?
They have, and you know what? I felt so sorry for him last week when we were playing. It just didn't look good, and he got subbed off at half time, didn't he, for Jayden Jones? And it's sad that that's the way it's happening, really, because he has been he's been through the mill with, obviously he had that career threatening back injury, didn't he, when we first signed him, and when he came back, as he said, Tony, round about this time last year, where he scores that absolute worldie against Watford. It was such a good goal, wasn't it? Was that last year? It was last year, wasn't it?
No,
before. 2 years ago. Yeah, I mean, what a goal that was. And, as you said there, that hopefully that was the time he was going to, kick on and everything like that. And there is a player there. There is a player there. There is a player, as Johnny just said there, definitely better than a League One side. No disrespect to Wickham whatsoever. And I hope he does well down there. And hope he kind of saves Doddsy down there, because they haven't got off to a good start whatsoever. So, yeah, he's another one, isn't he, where he just needs to go and play. He needs to go play football, he needs to go and, rediscover his form, everything like that. It's obviously he's not going to play for us again. But it's another one that we've got to wish well. He's never put a foot wrong for us. He's just been unlucky. Had 2 horrible injuries, and that takes it out of you, especially, at a young age. So, yeah. Interestingly as well, Chris, what I do actually want to quickly mention this, and it's kind of a bar with Birmingham fans. Now, do you remember when we signed Job 2 years ago? And there was this whole malarkey with Birmingham fans. Oh, it's all right, you can have him. We've got George Hall. He's going to be better than him anyway. George Hall's got to Port Vale today. So There you go.
Good move for the lad.
There are some decent Birmingham fans, yeah. Some of them are all right.
Yeah.
And it's also looking at when we do get back from international duty, we are going to come up against a Crystal Palace team with Mark Ian, because that move seems to have collapsed at the last minute. So,
was it?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah, just because it looks like the lad who was going to come in to replace him at Palace has now snubbed them for West Ham, I think, was the last thing I saw.
Yeah, because I saw the Palace manager, he basically said he won't let him leave until they have a replacement, and there was some concern around that. But yeah, I mean, let's go into the kind of final one the big one, I suppose, that we're waiting for, because going across the Sky Sports News kind of news ticker thing at the bottom, going through the news, it's saying that apparently we've agreed a deal in principle with Brian Brobby that we were talking about earlier. But the other interesting one from Ajax is Bertrand Traore, and you've got to suspect, Johnny, that Patrick Roberts moving out. This deal is only $2.5 million that we've apparently agreed with Ajax. And, he played a lot of games last season, played kind of over 30 league games. A lot of, he didn't play. He was very hit and miss at Aston Villa. That was a few years ago, and then he just kind of petered out and left, and kind of found himself a little bit again at Ajax last season. But this again, this kind of ties in with a lot of deals that sometimes we look at them, and when we look at these players, 29 years old. And you just wonder that for that price, $2.5 million, is it one of these that we've lost Patrick Roberts, we need cover, it's a bit of a no-brainer for this amount of money. But it ties in with some of the model where with a lot of these deals, you think, right, okay, well, that's the catch with him. Or he's had an injury, or he's gone off the boil, or there's just something else with them that, that part of the reason why they end up at Sunderland.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, you look at his numbers from last season, and he's actually, he had a good season. Nothing earth-shattering, nothing groundbreaking, but I think you're right. Something, whatever it was, just didn't work at Aston Villa. And so I think he's needed to move and probably change scenery and surroundings and, break out of all the familiar routines and habits and, whatever, just experience a bit of change. He's gone to a decent club in Ajax. And yeah, he's put that Villa spell behind him in a sense by getting regular football again, playing a lot of minutes every week, scoring goals, assisting goals. So I would expect that if that deal does happen, I mean, first of all, we all know he's not coming in to start every game. That's just obvious. But if he does come in, I would expect us to see a slightly different version of Bertrand Traore than the one that left the Premier League. But what I will say is this is an excellent omen for Sunderland, because on my last Football Manager save, I signed Bertrand Traore on a free when we went up, and he kept us up. And then so I tell you what, if everything goes according to that timeline, then in about 5 seasons' time or 6 seasons' time, we're going to win the league on the last day at St James's Park. So you're welcome, everyone. When that happens, you can all come and thank me now. Just remember this, bookmark this. And when we smashed them 3-0 at St James on the last day and lift the Premier League trophy in front of them, remember it's because we signed Bertrand Traore.
Anyway, moving on. I mean, and just talking about, I think we've gone through most of them. I think one of the other ones, and you might have to tell me more about this one, because I'm not sure I can find all the details if it's still going through. There's been a lot of rumours today that Nazari Rusin is apparently going off to Poland somewhere. I'm not quite sure what club, but it's one of these that, again, he signed. He looked like, at times for me, he looked like a bit of a competition winner. It was like almost kind of harking back to Milton Nunes kind of days. Did we buy the wrong fella? Did we think it was, did we watch videos of someone else and he rocked up or something? Just never looked like someone who was going to fit in, and never looked kind of strong enough, especially for the Championship. Still contracted for 2 years. 26 years old. But again, it might be another one we're waiting on, but there's been rumours all day that might be one that's confirmed before the end.
Yeah, you've pretty much hit the nail on the head there with what I feel about him as well. It just didn't happen. I mean, the fact that he said he was homesick got me when, he'd rather be in a war-torn country than Sunderland, was very strange. But, you know what? He's just not very good. That's just, that's just the two in the throat from it. He's just not a good footballer whatsoever, and he is nowhere near the standard that we expect him. And yeah, it hasn't worked. There's no surprises. I hope, again, another one. I'm not going to, I hope he does well wherever he goes. I think there was a couple of rumours that Harrison Jones was meant to be away as well on loan, but that doesn't seem to have kicked on or anything like that, which I'm surprised, because I think Harrison would do with a really good loan move, because I really, really like him, to be honest. But yeah, quickly going back to Rooston, good luck. Yeah, and I watched the Dodds on the way out, to be honest. Yeah, it was a strange one. Strange on that.
Yeah, big headline, as I've just said, that with that move being cancelled with Mark Gale's move to Liverpool from Palace is off again. So just to kind of recap, like I said, it's just coming up 8 o'clock, and we've had an hour past the transfer window, still waiting for things to be confirmed. So the only ones that the club have confirmed is Jensen Seal going to Wolfsburg on loan for the season, and Alan Brown moving to Middlesbrough. And the other one, and I'll just get this guy's first name up because I need to get used to it, it's Lutzerel Gertrude. And again, I'm getting good at this. I tell you what, the more practice I get, I'll eventually be able to say it properly. He has been confirmed on a season-long loan from RB Leipzig for £2.5 million for the year, and with an option to buy for £18.2 million next summer. 25 years old, 17 in the Netherlands. Looks a good player. We're still waiting on Brian Brobby to be confirmed, and potentially Burton Traore, which this was a late one. We're still waiting for Mark Guillau's kind of return to be completely confirmed, as far as I'm concerned. It might not be done like a transfer, but you'd expect some sort of, post from the club to say that he has left and confirmed.
Yeah, it got a here we go, didn't it, last night off Fabrizio? So surely there's got to be something to say that he's gone.
On that front, you're talking about the Brian Brobby thing, and there was tweets going out saying deal done 9 o'clock in the morning, and yet we're still waiting for the official confirmation. Still waiting for confirmation on Patrick Roberts as well. That one hasn't officially gone through yet, as far as we know. Niall Huggins, and we've mentioned Nazari Rooston as well. So there's only 3 that have been confirmed out of all of these deals.
I think there's one more as well, by the way. Don't forget, Ahmed Abdullahi is reportedly close to a move. I think the last I read was that he was potentially going to be going to Bristol City after his proposed loan deal to Angers, somewhere in France. After his proposed loan deal there sort of fell through at the last minute, which I think was down to that club going under some sort of financial embargo, punishment, whatever was happening there in the French football legal system.
So he's 21, Johnny. And he's got
it's all right, because clearly the deadline's actually 22. So he's the right side of it. And that, when I originally said that as well, the reason I hesitated so much is I was trying desperately to remember how old Seal was. I thought, well, it's a 50-50 chance here. I'm between 21 and 22. Let's go for it. So obviously chose wrong.
Well, I picked 21 just to wind you up, but it might have turned 22. But no, I think he's 21. But yeah, that's another one. I mean, people are actually thinking he might be kind of some sort of backup for this season. But that does mean we are waiting for the Brian Brobby one to come through to give us that kind of third striker. I just want to quickly talk before we kind of get into the generals, of what you think in terms of what we've got left and what we've got with the squad and options. Just want to bring you in, Johnny, on some of the players, because Ant's just talked about it a little bit, but some of the players who we might have expected to maybe move on that maybe haven't, because some of these, I was looking at the squad thinking, I actually thought some of these had left. You've still got Timothy Pembele, who's 22 years old, contracted until 2028 on the Sunderland books. I was expecting him to to make a move. I was wondering if Zach Johnson might have a loan move away. I think, like I mentioned with Harrison Jones. Adjei, I know he's injured, but potentially there might have been talk about him lining up something up for when he gets back, but might have to wait till January for that. Joe Anderson, Leo Hjeldo, I think he's in the same boat as Adjei with that injury. And then you've got people like Ian Poveda, Abdullah Bar, Jay Matete, who's still around the club and he's got one more year left on his contract, and Milan Alexic as well. I mean, there's a lot of players there who I thought would have moved on.
I agree. I think, you're never going to be able to get every single bit of business done in both directions that you would ideally want in every transfer window. It's very rare you're going to be able to get to do every single deal that you think would need to be done in terms of getting, every single player out who's not really going to feature. Obviously, as well as the incumbents being extremely difficult to negotiate as well. But having said that, some of them don't really surprise me too much, I'll be honest. And again, this is not to knock them personally or anything, but Pembele and Bar, they're just so clearly not in our thoughts, and also have never really torn the place up when they've gone out on loan moves previously. So I suspect that's just simply a case of it being difficult to drum up interest from clubs who could afford to take them off our hands even for a season. And I wouldn't be surprised to see them go in January. For me, the bigger surprises are Alexic. I thought he was definitely going to get a loan move. And I think in some ways I don't mind him staying, because I think it makes a bit of sense to have him still around the group and in England, in Sunderland, still trying to integrate, presumably still trying to perfect his own, English as in the language, and things like that, get to know his teammates still, because it can't be easy being an 18-year-old kid and getting dragged halfway across the continent to come to Sunderland, and, then you're sort of in and out and you're playing out of position and all the rest of it. So I thought he'd get a move, but I don't hate it. Zach Johnson, I'm very surprised he's still here. I thought he would have got a loan move. And Harrison Jones as well is another one who I did think, it seemed like it was the right time, more than anything. He was starting to get a little bit of game time on the pitch for the first team last season. And then we'd make the step up to the Premier League. You think, well, he's obviously not quite ready for that. So this would be the perfect time to continue that momentum that he's, finished last season with and get him a move somewhere. But again, it may just be a case that the club have had offers and looked at them and just thought that they're not quite right. Maybe he wasn't going to get enough football. Maybe they weren't going to be going to the right level. There's loads of reasons why even a loan deal might not make sense and be the right fit. So, I'm surprised in one sense about a lot of them, but like I say, on the other hand, I think we've done well to get as many out the door as we actually have.
Yeah. Oh, Ant, is it?
We were just on about it before, but we've just confirmed that Guillaume has gone back to Chelsea.
Oh, brilliant.
So there we go.
Okay, well, that one's confirmed. There's one we expected, but just clearly they had to get the paperwork done. But and on those names that I read out before, some of those you might have completely forgot about actually existed. But there's one more I want to add to that list that I didn't mention, Pierre Ekwa. Because there was rumours this afternoon, 3-4 o'clock, it came through that potentially, I don't know how there might have been absolute nonsense, but apparently he was linked to Rangers. And I'm not sure how much of that was rubbish or not, but he did have that kind of permanent deal. I think it was to Saint Etienne, if my memory serves me right, that fell through when it should have turned into a permanent deal. I'm not quite sure what happened there, but him, Pierre, added to the other names that I went through before. I would expect that the club would have probably been trying to get more out.
Yeah, I agree. I think the problem being, you look at like Pembele, for instance, even when we had him on loan last year, didn't we? And I don't think he pulled up many trees there. So it's just a thing of we've signed some, and it happens in every club. You sometimes you do sign some duck eggs, and unfortunately, some of these players it's hard to get off. They are going to be hard to get off the books, to be fair, because they just haven't done it. I would have expected the other one, Jay Matete. I would have expected Jay Matete to have gone to a League One club or something. I'm surprised he hasn't gone And I'm also surprised that we haven't looked at maybe doing a deal with Chef Wed for Jan Pavera. Just like, he was a legend there when he was there for that season, and they're struggling and everything like that. And
But
I'm amazed that hasn't happened. But
interestingly, though, Ant, all of their incomings collapsed because they couldn't sign anybody.
Oh, there we go, and that's probably why.
They had some deal, I think they had some deals lined up, and everything collapsed because of their finances. Just want to talk about two more quickly in terms of outgoing very quickly, just because I think they're interesting. We've got Dan Neil and Dennis Serkin, which I think are the last two, Johnny, whose contract's up at the end of the season, and they're sticking around. Dennis Serkin's obviously got that injury, so I think that's potentially, he's not in a position where he can try and find a club. But those two players, huge players. I mean, talking about big players, absolutely huge players in terms of us getting promoted. Now in the last year of their contract, would you expect them to sign contracts? Would you expect them to see what happens in January? I mean, what would you do if you're in their position?
It's a very different proposition for Dan Neil than it is for Dennis Serkin, I think, because Dennis Serkin has ahead of him currently. I think you would probably say that Ronaldo, obviously his first choice because he's starting every game. Masuaku, even when everybody's fit, I think is probably going to be viewed as second choice at the minute over Serkin. But, Ronaldo and Masuaku both are 31, I think. Or certainly they were both 31 on the days that they signed. That's me covering me back. So, yes, they're really good players, and Ronaldo especially looks the business so far, but Dennis Serkin's still a young man. He could easily stay and fight for his place, sign a new contract in 12 to 24 months' time. We could be looking at it and going, actually, Masuaku's gone. He was only here for a short-term spell. Ronaldo's starting to, slow down a little bit maybe, and Serkin's back in his first choice again, and he's laughing. Whereas Dan Neil, I think, you look at the signings we've brought in ahead of him. Yes, Xhaka's 32, but there's just not a chance in the world that he starts over Granit Xhaka. Even a 34-year-old Granit Xhaka is still probably going to be, technically a better player. And then Diarra and Siddiqui especially, they're very, very young men. So, if all goes to plan, as the club probably see it, you would think that they're going to be, pretty much cemented in those positions over the next, 3, 5, 10 years, depending on how the careers go. So that's a much more difficult sell, I think, to Dan Neil to say, sign a new contract, mate. But, I don't know when you're going to play or who you could possibly play over or what the timeline of any of this might be. So what really shocks me about the whole situation is that they've neither signed nor gone. That's the only thing for me. Like, I could easily see either happening. As much as I've just said Neil's probably not going to get too many chances in the near future, he did still captain us last season. He's a local lad and he is a good footballer. So there's a place for him here if he wants it. The same with Serkin, young lad, first choice last season. We all know how good he is when he's fit and firing. He's another one where there's definitely a place for him here. But to have got to this point where they're now, deadline's gone, there's been no whispers at all of any sort of movement for either of them, and not really anything on the contract situations either. That's what's strange to me. I thought there would have been an internal deadline for a solution one way or the other by now, but we've got to trust the club as well. They clearly know what they're doing.
Yeah. And how do you see it all playing out with those two?
I think they'll both go in January. I've got to be honest. I think if Serkin was fit, I think he'd have gone in this window. I think he's pining for a move back home, isn't he? So, and that's fair enough if that's what he wants to do. And I don't think the club will want to lose Dan Neil just as a business kind of point of view for nothing when whatever they can get from him in January will be 100% profit, considering he's come from the academy. I don't think Dan Neil will stay because he'll want to play first team football. I think if he wanted to have signed a new contract, he would have done it by now. And Serkin, I think it's just been, it's been since he got that wrist injury where he's just completely gone off the boil. And I don't know what it is, but towards the end of last season, he was making so many errors and he just wasn't getting us forward as much, wasn't putting the assists in as much. And it is a shame because I think he's a phenomenal footballer when he's on his day. And as Johnny said, he could be, the one where maybe in a year or two's time when the two left backs who we have signed have, a 33, 34 and we're doing it a young one. So he would be ideal for that, but I just don't see it. I think they'll be both gone in January. I think that's probably where we're looking at this, recovering of PSR money and all that stuff. I think with them too, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, let's quickly do a quick recap and then we'll kind of summarise before we sign off. So we've got 4 transfers that have been confirmed by the club. The incomings, we have Lucharel Gertrude, defender of quite a utility man by the sounds of it, fullback, centre half, and potentially a midfield. Dutch international, who was signed on a season-long loan for £2.5 million from RB Leipzig with an option to buy for around £18.2 million next summer, 25 years old, so it's a good age. And the 3 outgoings that have been confirmed, Alan Brown on a season-long loan to Middlesbrough, Jensen Seelt on a season-long loan to Wolfsburg, and Mark Guiu has now officially returned to Chelsea Football Club. The ones that we're waiting for, Patrick Roberts potentially going out to Birmingham on a season-long loan, Niall Huggins to Wickham on a season-long loan. Nazari Rusin has been rumoured to be off to somewhere in Poland on a season-long loan. And the big ones is Brian Brobby in a deal worth around 21 million, 22 million pounds, something like that. Maybe rising to 25, 23 years old from Ajax. Again, another Dutch international who's had 8 caps there. And the other one is Bertrand Traore from Ajax for just £2.5 million, 29 years old, and we'll remember him from back in the days at Aston Villa. So those are the ones that are confirmed. So again, I'll start with you, Johnny, just to summarise. Defender in, potentially a striker in, potentially a winger in, defender out on loan. We've lost a striker in terms of Guiu, who was with us. Alan Brown's moved on. A winger leaving in Patrick Roberts, and 2, well, let's say, maybe not even reserve players in Niall Huggins and Nazari Rusin. How would you sum up what we've done on transfer deadline day?
Sensible would be the overwhelming feeling, I think, for me. Just a lot of deals. Well, I say a lot of deals, comparatively a lot of deals that plug obvious gaps in the squad. The one thing, if you're being hypercritical, you might say that it's slightly disappointing to have got all this way with that chase of John Lusumi and then for nothing to have happened there. But at the same time, by all accounts, it's not really in our hands what happened there. It was simply a case of Bologna absolutely refusing to sell the player in the end. And, we offered good money, never brought him in. So what the sensible thing to do there is to turn your attention somewhere else, and, I'm not saying that it would be a case of either Lusumi or Gertrude, but it certainly feels like Gertrude is one where they've looked and gone, actually, he is a deal that maybe we could do for still a very, very pedigree player and somebody with loads of experience. I mean, we've obviously talked about all that earlier, but yeah, for me, sensible. If we bring Traore in as well, I think it's probably as much as you could have asked for us to do in terms of, covering positions. Because I think if you'd asked any Sunderland fan at the start of the deadline day, what positions do we need the most? It would have been a forward, a wide man, and a defender. Yeah. And, maybe it would have been an out-and-out centre-back people would have thought of more than somebody like Gertrude, who's got more versatility in his game. But, those are the positions we needed, and they're the positions we've got. Time will tell whether they're the right players, of course. That's going to be proven on the pitch. But, yeah, for me, that's a nice deadline day to cap off an extremely successful transfer window, and I think it leaves us in a really good position for the season ahead. And if we don't stay up, you may as well just make it a closed shop now, because if we can't stay up after this, nobody's staying up from the Championship ever again.
Yeah, we did break that record in terms of a newly promoted side. We took the record from Nottingham Forest in 2022, didn't we? So I think we've spent something in the region of, and maybe more, something potentially in the region of 200 million, because I think it was 170 million, but we'll see what the final figure is when it all goes through, versus their 142 million, which was the previous record. But the other one I didn't mention that we're waiting on is Ahmed Abdullahi, potentially going to Bristol City, which we mentioned earlier on. That's That was the last one that we're waiting for. But let's assume all that goes through, because as Jonny said, we were thinking, right, get a defender, get a winger. We didn't. Well, I don't think many of us saw Patrick Roberts leaving, although it was maybe on the cards. But the other one, Brian Brobby, losing that striker, that might be the one. If that doesn't go through, that actually you're thinking, are we leaving ourselves short with just Isidore and Mayenda up front?
Yeah, if that one doesn't go through, that'll be the little bit of the key disappointment, especially with Gio going. So that'll probably be the one. But it looks as if we're just waiting, aren't we? And it's just one of them things where we're just like waiting for the confirmation. So far as I'm aware, he's done his medical and he's flying over this week. So the medical's been done over in Holland. So, but we'll see what happens with that. You know what will end up happening? We'll stop recording and it'll get announced. It happens all the time on these podcasts that we do. But yeah, just to kind of echo what Jonny said, I think the whole window's been outstanding. Had we said 6-7 weeks ago would be, bringing in these players of international caliber and, plenty of experience and already joined, the likes of Granit Xhaka, who's for me has been an absolutely incredible signing. He's proved it with his first 3 games here. It's been great, absolutely great to have at least, if we do go down, and I kind of agree with Jonny said, no one should ever try again. But if we do go down, at least we've gone down trying, and everyone behind the scenes has done everything they possibly can to make us, a Premier League side next season, and that's all you can ask for. What we've asked for this transfer window we've got. I think we've had a very, very good window. Yeah, let's see what happens from now until January, where we do it all again, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll assume all of those deals will go through, because they have been rumbling on all day. But that does end I think you guys have touched on it, although, you're starting to run out of words to describe this transfer window in the context of Sunderland's history. It really is a historic, regardless of whether we go up or down, it's a historic transfer window, that we've broke records within the club. We've broke records outside of the club nationally in terms of newly promoted sides. It's been an incredible transfer window that I don't think many of us seen coming. And just a privilege to end the transfer window in the company of you both. So thank you very much, Jonny. Much appreciated, mate.
Oh, thank you very much, Chris. A pleasure to sit here and discuss the incomings of beautiful Dutch footballers with you, and I would do it again in 6 months' time.
Yes, I will be practicing my pronunciation for the next couple of weeks until
when you start turning up covered in gold leaf, that's when we need to start worrying.
Yes, because I love the gold, of course. But it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. It's been far too long, and thank you very much for your company tonight, mate.
And hopefully it's not too long until we next speak, Nick, because it has been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Not the next transfer deadline day before then. But yes, so we've tried to cover everything off that has happened in the evening. Keep a lookout on Roker Report website, because everything will stay updated on there. We'll keep you up to date as much as we can. But we're expecting all of those deals to go through. As I said, we've recorded this as we're kind of watching things come in. So in typical transfer deadline day fashion, deals will keep happening in the hours to come. The legal teams will be fighting that Newcastle didn't have any spelling mistakes on those, but we're convinced that they have. So we'll see how all that plays out in the next 24 hours or so. But thank you again, everyone, for listening. Of course, we'll have everything covered. And, of course, we'll keep you up to date, and we'll be discussing all of these transfers in the daily releases on How We're the Podcast. But from us, bye for now.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.